Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about Nina Jankowicz, somebody that we haven't discussed in over 2 years on this channel. She was Joe Biden's censorship czar, the person who was going to police disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation, all of which happened to be critical of the Biden administration, because she decided after she was shamed for being a party to this new Ministry of Truth that the Biden administration wanted to set up, that she was going to sue everybody for daring to speak out against her, and recently a judge just dismissed that lawsuit. So yes, this woman decided that she was not liking the criticism of her as a censor, so she filed a lawsuit in order to censor those critics, and the determination from the judge when he dismissed this lawsuit is that she was in fact a censor, and she can't stop censoring, so shut up, you stupid censor. Now, we're gonna get into this, but before we do, thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
So there's no real setup for this clip except for this is actually the person that Joe Biden put up as the head of this disinformation censorship board under the Department of Homeland Security, and yeah, she posted this video.
Information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain. They're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh!
So needless to say, way back when, in the long ago, when it was revealed that this person was going to be policing your speech, when it was revealed that this person was a partisan operative who, by the way, believed that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, and now she was going to be appointed to a board where she was going to try to pressure private companies into taking down said disinformation, people got angry, people got annoyed, and they started mocking this woman incessantly, and deservedly so. Now, on this channel, we always try to give the best possible reading to everyone, so I will say F- for the singing, but there were some functions of this disinformation board that likely would be positive. It's just the other functions were obviously super sketchy and something that we needed to be concerned about.
FEMA, the agency that handles disasters and environmental issues, would often counter misinformation about natural disasters. And let's say a foreign adversary like Iran or China perhaps would put out a narrative that says, oh, you know, here's how you get out of this city, or here's where you can find disaster aid. And that could put people really into danger, their lives into danger. That's the sort of disinformation and misinformation that we were looking to support the department in addressing, to make sure that they had best practices, and most importantly, to protect Americans' freedom of speech, civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy while we were doing all of that work. So every characterization of the board that you've heard up until now has been incorrect. And frankly, it's kind of ironic that the board itself was taken over by disinformation when it was meant to fight it.
So one of the positives of this board was in fact related to the southern border, at least in theory, and essentially the pitch for this particular portion of the disinformation board was that what ends up happening in Latin America is that certain statements from certain politicians end up getting translated or mistranslated, brought down south, and that ends up convincing people to send their kids or come to the United States of America because they believe if they can get here before a certain period of time, they will be granted legal status. Now, this was notoriously a problem, and again, I'm giving the fairest reading, so just relax, everybody. I understand that this was a censorship board, but under the Obama administration, when he instituted DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, for some reason that got garbled in the translation in Latin America, and that is when we had those instances of a bunch of unaccompanied minors arriving at the border. So, if you had somebody in the government to kind of clarify statements like that to tell people to not come to the border, and that would prevent a lot of children from being sent to the border, that would be an objectively good thing wherever you are on the immigration issue. Now, I don't want all these people flooding the border because it's absurd. It's a problem that we have to deal with. It costs us a ton of money. But even if you are someone who's like, bring on the migrants, bring on the illegals, the fact of the matter is sending unaccompanied children on these dangerous journeys ultimately ends up leading to the death, exploitation, and all kinds of horrible things for said children. So this was considered one of the legitimate functions of this disinformation board. That being said, as you started to look at the other things that they were trying to fact check, check as the other things that they were trying to correct, you realize what direction they were going in. One of the things that this board was targeting was conversations related to the Afghanistan withdrawal, which didn't make any sense because those were just criticisms of the Biden administration, and in no way, shape, or form was that disinformation that needed to be policed, a la sending people to the border, children, because they misunderstood the DACA policy. So we knew from the jump that this was a censorship position. On top of that, Nina Jankowicz, as you heard in her stupid ass song and everything in her career, was in fact a left-wing activist, a censor, somebody who wanted to stop what she believed to be right-wing misinformation. Not just misinformation overall, but right-wing misinformation. She bought into every single conspiracy theory against the evil orange man, Russia collusion, all that nonsense. So obviously she received a ton of deserved criticism for the fact that she was going for this position in order to censor the American people. And let us be clear, she was trying to censor the American people. And don't take my word for it, this is what the judge ruled when he dismissed this case, which is why a bunch of headlines that you could see say Nina Jankowicz was determined by a judge to actually be a censor.
We saw a lot of disinformation where coyotes, as they're called, human smugglers, are online sometimes saying that this was a ministry of truth, which in discovery does not look good for them, and that may change the way that they deal with this type of harassment that is begotten by enemies of the Biden administration and folks who I think rightly have some concerns about how speech is dealt with in America. Characterized the board in completely incorrect terms. They said that I was going to be a disinformation czar and that the board was going to have the power not only to adjudicate what Americans said online, but to send people with guns to Americans' doors to police speech. And just to be perfectly clear again, not only do I think that is wrong, I wouldn't have taken the job if it had anything to do with that.
So this is an interview that Jankowicz did where she said, oh, this is ridiculous. I would never want to do that. We would never police speech. And they were saying that I was going to send people with guns in order to go after people and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, whether or not you actually send armed people to people's houses, everything the government does is at the barrel of a gun. Everything that the government does is with the backing of force. If you don't pay your taxes, sure, initially that is not something that is going to lead to armed people showing up to your place, but keep not paying your taxes and see how quickly federal agents will raid your property. Again, every single law comes with enforcement. The idea that eventually that this could spiral out of control, to me, is not that crazy, especially when you're labeling a lot of different American speech as somehow related to foreign actors doing intelligence work and whatnot. And again, that could lead to their cracking down. Very famously, we had Julian Assange with WikiLeaks, who ultimately ended up being held in an embassy for a long time trying to avoid charges because all these different governments were cracking down on him. Eventually, Julian Assange was going to be arrested. He was going to be charged for what appears to be reporting to me, whether you like the guy or not. And the fact of the matter is that was wildly inappropriate, but it goes to show you what happens when the government thinks that they have a right to control information.
DHS was kind of slow in responding to the quote-unquote criticisms. And as a result, it just got completely out of hand within hours, if not days. My family was receiving threats. At the time, I was weeks away from giving birth, so in my 9th month of pregnancy. And we were getting death threats, rape threats, stuff about my unborn child. There was a lot of intense scrutiny into my family, extended members of my family. What was difficult was that I wasn't being heard within the department, that they had hired a disinformation expert to advise them on these things, and my advice was being routinely tossed aside, especially when it had to do with my own well-being and safety.
Now, Jankowicz said that, she received all these different various threats and all this harassment from all these different people, and to be 100% clear, even though this should go without saying, obviously, I do not support threats on people's lives over political issues. It's wildly inappropriate, and it completely undercuts the message. But the thing is, Nina Jankowicz isn't suing people over those threats. She is suing Fox News and all these different news agencies over reporting that she happened to be a censorship czar, that she was looking to police speech, and we see that repeatedly throughout her history. I mean, if you go search her name in all these different terms, what you'll find out is that she has all these different interviews where she's complaining, moaning about Trump criticizing NATO for not paying.
I don't know. I don't want to put words in George F. Kennan's mouth, but certainly this is unusual behavior coming out of a U.S. president. U.S. has traditionally been the de facto leader of NATO, and to have a U.S. president coming in and questioning the utility of the alliance and badgering allies about their defense spending budgets in such a belligerent way is certainly not the tone I think many in the defense sector would like to see the president setting right now.
Nina, do you think that Donald Trump and his messaging to NATO will essentially be successful? I mean, you know, he's been damaging relationships, as it appears, from externally at least, left, right and centre over the last few months. I mean, you know, can that be recovered?
I'm not sure if it can be recovered. We've certainly seen things on a downward trend over the past 18 months, and even since his campaign. I mean, 2 years ago, I wrote an article about Donald Trump's problematic stance toward NATO, and it hasn't changed. So I think he showed that he's committed to these views, and I think what we're seeing at this summit is other allies stepping up to fill the leadership gap that the United States is leaving.
Again, that is a political opinion. This woman is a partisan actor, and the idea that she would be in charge of determining what is disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation, and be pressuring private companies under this new agency in order to take that stuff down or rewrite it is absolutely shameful and ridiculous. So you didn't go after the randoms threatening you. You didn't demand charges be pressed against them. You went after Fox News. And one of the funniest things about her lawsuit, which was so bad, is the fact that the judge pointed out that only one of about 37 statements she put forward were even related to her. They were all about the board. So she was suing to censor people, to punish them, to gain from them financially, because they were criticizing a government agency, not even her, a government agent, which also is protected, for censoring people, for being set up to censor people. And the judge not only ruled that this was in fact true, that's the purpose of the agency, that censorship is a broad term, and what she was doing, what she's advocating for, what she was supporting, the mission statement was actually under the purview of that broad definition, but she was also doing it so you can't criticize the government for trying to censor you. Insane. And again, just in case you were wondering how badly she lost the case, I want to read you some select quotes from the judge that are featured in this Reason article. I will also link the judge's ruling in the description so you could check it out, just so you understand how bad this case actually was. Quote, Fox contends, and I agree, that Jankowicz has not pleaded facts in which it could plausibly be inferred that the challenge statements regarding the intended censorship by Jankowicz are not substantially true, end quote. And this comes from the U.S. District Judge, Colm F. Connolly, who wrote this on July 22nd in his order to dismiss. Quote, on the contrary, as noted above, censorship is commonly understood to encompass efforts to scrutinize and examine speech in order to suppress certain communications. The Disinformation Government Board was formed precisely to examine citizen speech and, in coordination with the private sector, identify misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. All that's in quotes, by the way. That objectively is fairly criticized as a form of censorship, he concluded. As a result, he dismissed Jankowicz's claim in its entirety. Now, there are ways to lose a case, and then there are ways to lose a case. And Nina Jankowicz, the censorship czar, really hit it out of the park with this one, because not only did the judge say the criticisms of her, however few she actually listed in her lawsuit, were 100% true, but most of the things, as I said earlier, were in fact statements about the governance board, which were criticisms of a government agency, therefore they were not actionable by her. And on top of that, he pointed out that this would not meet the standard for defamation in a bunch of different jurisdictions nationally, even though this was adjudicated in New York's jurisdiction, because these were obviously opinions. So here you have a woman who's saying, I'm not a censor, oh my god, these poor me, I just had to experience all these threats and whatnot, saying that she will sue you for your opinions against her and call that disinformation and demand money from you because she's that much of a censor. Again, absurd in every possible way. Now look, Jankowicz has vowed to appeal this particular thing to the circuit court, and I guess she has to do that because she took in all this money via GoFundMe, around $80,000, in order to sue to restore her reputation. But the way that this case was dismantled by this judge really goes to show you that there was absolutely nothing to it. it. And I knew that this was a story that when it crossed my radar when I was away on my honeymoon, I definitely wanted to address again when I came back, because it is so absurd that you have a woman who is so angry she is being called a censor that she decided that the only retort to those allegations was to sue to censor those criticisms. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Maybe you guys love Nina Jankowicz's singing, and if you do, let me know down in the comments below. As usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the censorship czar getting smacked down by the courts. Till next time.